Hello, welcome into high school football preview. We are back to another season of high school football. I'm Matt Coss along with Matt Dahlseid of QCVarsity, and what we hope is a weekly occurrence. We're going to break down some of the big games on both sides of the river. We're going to start today with the Illinois side of things, the Big Six. Matt, which covers the Big Six on a regular basis for us. Allman at home in week one against Peoria High. Talk a little bit about what you anticipate with that matchup.
Could be a revenge game for Allman. Peoria High beat them last year in the first game of the year. Allman was ranked number 1, and Peoria High threw for 372 yards and beat them 38-36. Peoria High returns their all-conference quarterback. He threw for over 1,800 yards last year in Orlando Hernandez. They also returned 4 of their top 5 receivers, so they should be pretty explosive offensively. Defensively, they gave up a lot of points too. They gave up 32 points per game last year. Allman, they're pretty much a new team this year. They just returned 5 starters, 1 on offense, 4 on defense. Kylie Dorsey will be their primary ball carrier. They're always a good running team though, so expect them to rack up a lot of yards there.
I guess the big question mark is Moline going to play a football game this week
that's true.
with the whole situation going on with Galesburg.
Yep, we got the teacher's strike in Galesburg, so if they don't have that issue resolved by Friday, Moline will win by forfeit. If they do play, Galesburg returns quite a bit of experience, especially in the backfield. They return a 3-year starter at quarterback with Peyton Isaacson, and they return the Big Six's leading rusher from last year, Ben Holloway. He rushed for over 1,000 yards. Moline, they had a bunch of injuries and turnover issues last year, so they're going to try to resolve that, and Matt was his 2nd year as head coach. Andy Wojcinski returns as their leading rusher in the backfield. He had over 400 yards last year and the team high 7 touchdowns. They've got a quarterback controversy, I guess, going on heading into week 1. Quayshawn Wilson is their returning starter, but he'll be kind of pushed by Noah Mosier at the position, so we'll see if they split time or if Wilson gets the majority of the snaps there.
Jason Kirby's debut, United Township, down at Quincy, is that correct?
Yep, that's right. Coach Kirby's going to try to begin his job at turning around UT. They've really struggled the past few years, haven't had more than 2 wins in over 10 years. It'll be a tough test against Quincy. Quincy hasn't lost to UT in over a decade, so UT's got their work cut out for them. Quincy graduated a lot of explosive players from last year. Their school's leading rusher, and what's his name? I don't remember.
Malik Robbins.
Malik Robbins,
yeah.
Obviously. And then Jordan Osborne, he was also a very good rusher for them, and they graduated an all-state linebacker as well, and Malik Bondon. UT, they should be an interesting team to watch, especially on offense. Coach Kirby likes to run the option. They've got a first-year quarterback, senior quarterback, in Andrew Tynes. He was a running back last year, but he's going to make the switch to quarterback this season. He'll be handing off to Dakari Mars, who's a really powerful back. Tynes said that he runs like a freight train. And then we also have a couple of new receivers for UT this year with basketball players Joey Miles and Lamont Mitchell coming out for the team. So we'll see if they get many touches. The quarterback Andrew Tynes says they have great hands, and it's going to be a show this year watching them on the corners. So see how that works out. And then
real quickly, Rocky, what do they?
Rocky against Manual. Manual has a 24-game losing streak, so you wouldn't think that Rocky would have too much problem with them. But Rocky also graduated quite a bit of talent, like some of these other teams. They just returned 6 starters. They're always solid defensively. They always have a good running game, so I don't think they should have too much of a test with Manual. But we'll see.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, now let's turn to the Iowa side, and Matt will preview the Metro Schools games this week.
Well, the big one on tap is right out of the chute Thursday night. You got Bettendorf and Davenport Assumption at Brady Street Stadium. With the advent of district football now, some of these MAC rivalries we've seen in the past are still going to happen, but they're going to happen a lot earlier in the season. So we got Bettendorf Assumption Thursday night. Bettendorf's lost the last 3 meetings to Assumption. In fact, the Bulldogs have only scored 1 touchdown against the Knights in the last 3 meetings. So last year's contest, Assumption won over at Tubell Stadium 9-3. This year, Assumption's got some new pieces in place. Jake Gervais obviously graduated. James Hua, their running back, graduated. So it'll be interesting to see how they're kind of dialed in here from week 1. Tim Doyle's going to be their quarterback to start the season. Joe Argo, who is fighting for that position as well, is out with injury right now. So it'll be interesting to see how well Assumption can move the football against Bettendorf's dynamic front 7 on defense. David Smith, the state's leading tackler in Class 4A, is back for the Bulldogs at linebacker, along with Casson Wolf, another guy who's a 3-year starter. And then up front, they've got Vince Clem and Jack Kallenberger back. So Bettendorf's very good in the front 7. And then on the flip side, offensively, for Bettendorf, can they sustain some consistency? They've got some new pieces at running back and receiver. They do have a veteran back at quarterback with Kyle Cox, 3rd year as a starting quarterback. So should be a good atmosphere, a good test for both teams right out of the gate to see where they stand. With Assumption being in Class 3A now, these first 2 weeks may be their toughest 2 games with Bettendorf and then Xavier, the defending state runner-up in Class 4A a year ago. So they'll get a good handle on where they're at. Moving to Friday night, the big game is North Scott at Pleasant Valley over at Spartan Stadium. Pleasant Valley, which won the last 2 MAC titles, 11-1 each of the last 2 years, been to the quarterfinals, but they've got a lot different team this year. They lost an established quarterback in Brady Letney, their top running back in TJ Zerbonia, some pieces off that offensive line, an all-state kicker. So, but Coach Rusty Van Winsiga is optimistic that this team can continue to stay at that high level. They've got 2 core linebackers back with Ben Slavens, David Carr, both juniors who fly the football extremely well. It's going to be interesting to see the battle I'm looking forward to in this game, because North Scott is so explosive offensively with Matt Saish as their quarterback, Ricky Grimes on the outside, Jacob Ridgway in the backfield. But both teams are kind of unproven up front. North Scott's only got 1 starter back on the offensive line. PV's got an entirely new defensive front line, so I think the team that can win that battle up front on both sides is probably going to be the team at the end of the night. But this is a big season for North Scott. This is a year they've kind of been pointing to a lot of seniors, a lot of playmakers. Colin Kreider, who was an all-stater in baseball, a great wrestler as well. He kind of leads that defense from his linebacker spot. So that should be an interesting game. Some of the other games going on in the Metro, Davenport North at Davenport West. For the last 4 years, these teams have only won 1 game, and it's been against each other, and they've kind of traded back and forth wins. So it'll be interesting to see who kind of gets the edge in that matchup and can kind of build a little bit of confidence to start their season. Then, with district football starting, it has now allowed the opportunity for Clinton to play Central DeWitt. So 2 towns separated by less than about 15 miles will play in the opener at Central DeWitt. Should be a good test. Central DeWitt's got some veterans back on defense with 7 starters. On the flip side, Clinton's pretty young offensively. They got a sophomore quarterback in Johnny Sullivan. So should be interesting to see how that kind of plays out. And then the other 2 games, Central's at Burlington in week 1. It's imperative for Central to get off to a good start. They've got Burlington and Davenport West the first 2 weeks before the middle of their schedule is really tough against Bettendorf, Iowa City West, and PV. And Muscatine makes a long trip up to Dubuque Hempstead for the opener. So a lot of games should be interesting. A lot of rivalries right out of the chute in the first week. So hopefully we'll be in for a good Thursday and Friday night of football.
All right, sounds good. And now Matt will go over some of the top area games this week. Got a pretty big one on the Illinois side.
Yeah, definitely our area game of the week this week is going to be Sterling Newman at Rockridge. And if you remember back to a year ago, Sterling Newman's only loss of the season came in the opener to Rockridge. After they lost that game, they ran off 13 straight and won a Class 2A state title. Rockridge was undefeated during the regular season, got to the second round of the playoffs. So these are two of the more established 2A programs in Illinois. Rockridge has got a new quarterback in Luke Johnson. Newman has arguably what Coach Mike Paposi says is maybe the best offensive line he's had since he's been there in 35 years. So that'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out for the first week.
And anything else on the Illinois side?
The other two games to keep an eye on the Illinois side, Erie Prophetstown is at Kewanee in week 1. Both teams were playoff qualifiers a year ago. And then Geneseo, who was a state runner-up a year ago in Class 4A, opens at home against Dunlap. So Geneseo lost quite a few pieces from their team a year ago, but Lane Acrie's back, who had a great postseason a year ago. So Geneseo should be fueled for another good season.
Sounds good. And what do we got going on the Iowa side?
Iowa side, we don't really have maybe that marquee matchup in week 1, but you've got some interesting battles. Makokata is going to go up and play Cascade, a really good Class 2A program. Louisa Muscatines at Northeast Goose Lake in the opener. West Liberty and Tipton, who are conference rivals in a lot of other sports, play right out of the gate. Williamsburg travels to Wilton in week 1. It will be the debut for Wilton coach Ryan Hetzler, who took over the program this summer. Be interesting, Wilton's got some new parts. They lost All-State quarterback, our Athlete of the Year, Tyler Hetzler. So they got some new parts they're putting in. Javin Drake's going to be their quarterback now, one of their talented baseball pitchers. And then the other game is Easton Valley at Bellevue, and why this is kind of significant, Easton Valley's back to playing 11-man football after being in the 8-man game for the last couple of years. So be interesting to see the adjustments they have to make. That's quite a transition going from 8 to 11. So it may be a couple weeks before they kind of iron out some of the kinks, but it should be. It's fun that we're back to football season again. So a lot of games on tap, so it should be fun.
We also want to encourage you guys to check out our football tab that we've got in Wednesday's issue of the paper. It's got capsules for each team in the area, metro and area. It's got storylines from different each side of the river. So yeah, and also for our Friday night coverage, we have Friday night tweets. We have reporters tweeting from each game that they're covering. You can check that out on QCVarsity.com. And yeah, just check out Saturday's issue of the paper for all of our coverage from Friday's action.